excellent day for an exorcism.
The Exorcist wasn't just a horror movie, it was an earthquake that shook cinema, religion, and culture all at once. Behind the screams on screen were fires, fainting audiences, broken bones, and a director willing to push everyone to the brink. What audiences didn't see was the chaos unfolding on set. Actors getting injured, sets burning down mysteriously, and priests being called in to bless the production. Today, we'll reveal 20 weird facts about The Exorcist, secrets that show just how dangerous, cursed, and groundbreaking this film truly was. And stick around for the bonus fact, because it's the most chilling of them all. Hit that like button, and let's dive in. The mysterious set fire. During production, the entire Exorcist house set burned to the ground. Everything, except Reagan's bedroom. Crew members were horrified when they found the child's exorcism room untouched, almost as if it had been spared deliberately. Director William Friedkin later admitted he was so shaken he brought in a Jesuit priest to bless the set. Was it faulty wiring or something darker? Cast members believed the movie was cursed from that moment forward, and the eerie incident fueled rumors of supernatural interference that haunted the shoot. Audiences see terror on screen, but behind the scenes, people genuinely wondered if evil forces were already at work. Ellen Burstyn's back injury. Ellen Burstyn, who played Reagan's mother Chris, endured a brutal injury that remained in the final cut. In the scene where Reagan violently throws her mother across the room, the harness pulled Burstyn with such force that she landed painfully on her back. Her scream of agony wasn't acting, it was real. Burstyn begged director William Friedkin to go easier on the stunt, but he demanded authenticity. That one take left her with a permanent spinal injury. The audience thought it was special effects, but what they heard was the sound of genuine human pain captured forever on film. The exorcism tape that inspired it all. Author William Peter Blatty based The Exorcist on a true case. In 1949, a young boy in Maryland, referred to as Roland O., was reportedly possessed. Jesuit priests documented his exorcism, and those notes made their way into Blatty's hands decades later. The boy allegedly spoke in Latin, objects flew across the room, and strange markings appeared on his body. While Blatty fictionalized much of the story, he insisted the roots of the novel, and later the film, were real. That's why the movie feels so unnervingly authentic. It wasn't just horror, it was history reimagined. Friedkin's psychological warfare. Director William Friedkin earned the nickname Hurricane Billy for his merciless methods. He fired guns on set to startle actors, slapped people without warning, and demanded priests actually perform blessings before filming. Jason Miller, who played Father Karras, once refused to give a line the way Friedkin wanted. Friedkin responded by slapping him across the face, then immediately yelling, "Action!" The raw emotion you see in Miller's eyes wasn't acting. It was humiliation, anger, and shock. This wasn't just direction, it was psychological warfare, and it left a lasting scar on the cast. Linda Blair's agonizing harness scenes. At just 14 years old, Linda Blair endured brutal physical challenges. In the famous bed thrashing sequence, she was strapped into a mechanical rig that jerked her body violently. At one point, the rig broke and repeatedly slammed her spine. Linda screamed in real pain, but the cameras kept rolling. The footage you see isn't a special effect. It's a child genuinely suffering. Blair later said that filming was so traumatic she avoided horror films for years. For audiences, it was terrifying. For Linda, it was an ordeal she would never forget. 6. The sound of demons was animal screams. The unsettling growls and demonic roars weren't created by machines. They came from tortured animals. Sound designers layered recordings of pigs squealing before slaughter, bees buzzing angrily, and snarling dogs. Mixed together, they formed the unholy soundtrack of possession. What audiences didn't realize was that the soundscape was designed to trigger primal fear. Director William Friedkin believed human beings react instinctively to animal distress, so he demanded these horrifying sounds be woven in. That's why the exorcism sequences feel unbearable, not just visually, but on a subconscious biological level. The horror was quite literally built to crawl under your skin. Real priests on set. Some of the most convincing performances came from people who weren't actors at all. William Friedkin cast real Jesuit priests to play supporting roles, including Reverend William O'Malley as Father Dyer. His emotional breakdown during Father Karras' death scene wasn't scripted. Friedkin pulled him aside, slapped him hard across the face, then shouted, "Action!" The trembling, tearful reaction you see on screen is authentic. It wasn't acting, it was raw human response. This blurred the line between cinema and reality, leaving even the priests themselves shaken by what they had been part of. Audience reactions turned theaters into chaos. When The Exorcist premiered in 1973, movie theaters became emergency rooms. Audiences fainted, vomited, and even ran screaming into the streets. Some theaters provided barf bags with tickets. In Boston, one woman broke her jaw when she fainted and fell forward onto the seat in front of her. Paramedics were routinely called during screenings, not since Psycho had a film generated such hysteria. It wasn't just a movie, it was a nationwide shockwave, and that chaos only fueled ticket sales, making it one of the most profitable R-rated films of its time. The iconic vomit scene was an accident. The pea soup vomit scene became legendary, but it didn't go as planned. The rig was supposed to spray Jason Miller's chest, but it misfired and blasted him directly in the face. His look of utter disgust and rage, completely real. Friedkin loved the take so much he kept it. The substance itself was made from Campbell's pea soup mixed with oatmeal, and the smell was revolting under the hot studio lights. For Miller, it was pure humiliation. For the audience, it was the moment they couldn't unsee. What was a mistake became movie history. The MPAA wanted it cut to pieces. When Friedkin submitted The Exorcist to the MPAA, censors were horrified. The crucifix scene, the blasphemous language, the medical procedures, all of it pushed the limits of what could appear in American theaters. Studio executives feared it would get an X rating, which would kill box office potential. Miraculously, the film slipped through with an R rating, though some cities banned it outright. The controversy made headlines, and audiences lined up just to see what was considered too dangerous. And before we continue, go ahead and like and subscribe, because the next 10 facts reveal even darker truths about The Exorcist. The cursed body count. Few films carry the reputation of being cursed quite like The Exorcist. By the time production wrapped, 9 people connected to the film had died, either directly or shortly afterward. Jack McGowan, who played Burke Dennings, died from influenza right after finishing his role. Vasiliki Maliaros, who portrayed Father Karras' mother, passed away before the film even premiered. Even crew members and relatives of cast were struck by sudden accidents or illnesses. These tragedies only deepened the legend of the Exorcist curse. For audiences, it became part of the film's aura. Watching it didn't just mean seeing horror, but feeling like you were touching something truly dangerous. Linda Blair's instant stardom and backlash. Linda Blair went from a normal teenager to one of the most famous faces in the world overnight. But fame brought danger. After the movie's release, she received constant harassment and even death threats from religious extremists who accused her of glorifying Satan. Warner Brothers hired bodyguards to protect her. At just 15, Blair was thrust into a media storm she wasn't prepared for, and the trauma of both the filming and the aftermath haunted her career. Though she later embraced horror conventions and fan culture, the psychological cost of being the possessed girl was something she carried for decades. Her story reminds us the scars of The Exorcist weren't just fictional. They were very real. The medical scenes were scarier than the demons. Many viewers said the scariest part of The Exorcist wasn't the possession. It was the medical tests Regan undergoes. The cerebral angiography scene, where a needle is inserted into her neck and blood spurts out, horrified audiences. What made it worse? The scene was filmed with real medical equipment and performed by actual technicians. Friedkin insisted on authenticity, using a real radiology lab. The sound of the machine and the graphic realism shocked audiences because it looked too real, because it was real. Decades later, doctors still say that scene is one of the most accurate depictions of medical testing in cinema. It wasn't supernatural terror that disturbed people. It was cold, clinical reality. Mercedes McCambridge's terrifying voice work. The guttural, chilling voice of the demon Pazuzu didn't come from Linda Blair. It was created by actress Mercedes McCambridge. To achieve the horrifying sound, she swallowed raw eggs, chain-smoked cigarettes, and even drank whiskey during recording sessions. To push her voice further, she insisted on being bound to a chair while delivering the lines, replicating Regan's restraints. Friedkin described her performance as one of the most disturbing things he'd ever witnessed. Blair mouthed the words on screen, but it was McCambridge who gave the demon its terrifying personality. For many, her contribution is what made the possession feel authentic. It wasn't just sound design. It was a full-body performance of torment. The opening scene in Iraq was a nightmare to film. The eerie prologue in Iraq, where Father Merrin confronts the ancient demon statue, was more difficult to film than most of the exorcism sequences. The crew battled extreme heat, reaching 130 degrees Fahrenheit, while transporting heavy equipment across archaeological sites. Local extras often fainted from exhaustion. Friedkin, always chasing authenticity, refused to compromise, insisting the opening needed real locations. For actor Max von Sydow, the conditions were brutal. He was in his 40s playing an elderly priest under scorching sun, covered in heavy makeup. Yet that sequence, filmed with sweat, dust, and real discomfort, set the tone for the entire movie. It wasn't Hollywood trickery. It was human endurance against a backdrop of ancient history. Max von Sydow's crisis of faith. Max von Sydow, cast as Father Merrin, wasn't just battling the heat in Iraq, he was battling himself. Though a seasoned actor, Sydow admitted he struggled with the spiritual weight of the role. He was a skeptic, not a devout believer, and he worried audiences would sense his doubts. But during filming, he confessed that eerie moments on set, like lights flickering and unexplained noises, shook him. Playing a priest in a film so steeped in religious controversy forced him to confront questions he had avoided for years. Ironically, his haunted, uneasy energy gave Merrin's character depth. It wasn't simply acting, it was a real man wrestling with forces, both fictional and personal, that he could not fully understand. The freezing exorcism room. The exorcism sequences were filmed in a room chilled to below freezing temperatures. To achieve the visible breath of the actors, technicians pumped in massive refrigeration units until the set felt like a meat locker. Cast and crew bundled in parkas between takes, while Linda Blair, wearing only a thin nightgown, shivered uncontrollably. At times, the cold caused cameras to jam. Friedkin insisted on this brutal realism, saying audiences would know if the effect was fake. The actors trembling, the condensation, the frost, it was all genuine. Blair later recalled the cold as one of the hardest parts of filming, saying it felt like torture. The audience saw horror. The cast endured real physical misery to create it. The subliminal demon face. Viewers remember the demon's brief, terrifying face flashing across the screen, but many didn't realize it was added as subliminal imagery. Friedkin inserted quick cuts of actress Eileen Dietz in demon makeup, often lasting less than a second. These flashes appeared in Reagan's dreams, in shadows, even during the exorcism itself. The effect was so subtle most people didn't consciously notice, but it worked on a subconscious level, leaving audiences deeply unsettled. Friedkin believed subliminal imagery bypassed logic and struck directly at the primitive brain. What terrified people most wasn't always what they saw, it was what they thought they saw. This experimental technique became one of cinema's most infamous examples of psychological manipulation. Hospital technician's dark secret. The hospital angiography scene wasn't just disturbing because of its realism. It became infamous years later when one of the real-life radiology technicians, Paul Bateson, was convicted of murder. In 1979, Bateson was found guilty of killing a film critic, and he later confessed to additional killings in New York's gay community, though those confessions were never fully proven. For audiences revisiting The Exorcist, knowing a convicted murderer appears on screen made the film even more disturbing. It blurred the line between fiction and reality in ways no one could have anticipated. What was once simply a shocking scene became chilling evidence that evil sometimes lurks in the background of real life. A box office exorcism. Despite, or perhaps because of, the controversy, The Exorcist became a box office phenomenon. Released in December 1973, it grossed over $400 million worldwide, making it one of the highest-grossing R-rated films of all time. But the financial success wasn't just about shock value. Audiences returned multiple times, dragging friends just to see their reactions. Lines wrapped around blocks, and theaters extended showings late into the night. It wasn't simply a horror movie, it was an event, a cultural earthquake. Religious groups protested, critics were divided, and yet audiences couldn't stay away. The legacy of its box office success proved one thing: controversy sells, and The Exorcist sold terror better than anyone expected. Perhaps the most chilling secret is that a real exorcist was consulted during production. Father Thomas Birmingham, a Jesuit priest and professor, served as a technical advisor. He not only taught the cast and crew about Catholic rituals, but also warned Friedkin that tampering with such subject matter might invite darkness. To ease fears, he performed a blessing on the set. Some crew members swore things felt calmer afterward. Others claimed the curse only grew stronger. Friedkin later admitted that Birmingham's presence gave the film an aura of legitimacy that disturbed him as much as it reassured him. The unsettling truth? The Exorcist wasn't just pretending to tap into forbidden territory. It actually did. 50 years later, The Exorcist still feels more dangerous than most modern horror films. It wasn't just pea soup, makeup, and special effects. It was broken bones, freezing rooms, subliminal demons, and a director who pushed everyone past their limits. It was a film that blurred the line between performance and punishment, between acting and actual suffering. Its legacy is one of awe and unease, a movie so cursed, so powerful, and so unflinching that audiences still whisper about it today. If you enjoyed these revelations, like, subscribe, and share to keep the secrets of cinema alive. Because when it comes to The Exorcist, the scariest moments weren't on screen. They were behind the camera,